Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today I want to talk about one of the coolest things that has been able to happen in the whole modern mirrorless trend, and that is the ability to adapt lenses on multiple cameras, multiple formats. And specifically today we are going to compare 9 different Leica lenses across 3 different formats, from a cropped sensor to a full frame sensor to a, I don't have the GFX here anymore, but here's a medium format sensor. So by putting each of the 9 lenses that I just had in my possession at the time on each camera, we'll be able to see kind of how they perform, which ones work well on what cameras, and surprisingly, many of which you can actually toss on a medium format sensor and still get really good results. And before I start this whole experiment, that's just what this is, an experiment. I tried not to do any processing, any lens corrections. All that kind of stuff can definitely be done to help with vignetting and all sorts of stuff. But I will say that if you want more information on any of these lenses, I think almost all of them, maybe all of them, I've done videos on, save the 28 Summicron. I haven't done a specific video on that, but every other lens in this video, I've done specific videos on. So if a lens in here kind of catches your eye, there'll be links down below for you to go and check out the full review of that particular lens. And I just want to say off the bat that some of these lenses were sent to me for review for those original review videos, but no one's asking me to make these videos in terms of companies or anything. I've just had a lot of requests specifically for people, and I want to make my channel sort of like a library of information about sort of more obscure cameras and things like that. So this video isn't sponsored, but if you would consider liking and subscribing, that would be very beneficial for me. And as well, if you'd like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon and my Cascade presets, all of which are linked in the description down below. So here's kind of how this is gonna go. The first photo will be the lens on the crop sensor of the X-E4. The second photo will be the native Leica M-mount, which is the full frame 36x24. And then the third photo will be adapted on to the Fujifilm GFX 50R. That sensor is a 44x33. So you'll see how everything kind of changes and expands out as we move throughout the sensor sizes. And one final note before we begin as well, all of these photos were taken at each lens's widest aperture. I tried to use focus peaking and kind of zooming in to get critical focus on each. So I'll show you kind of the general field of view, the cropped in to 100% to try to see how everything looks. And then again, everything's gonna be wide open so you can see what that depth of field looks like. I'll also make sure to timestamp all of these lenses, so if there's a lens you want to skip or a lens you specifically want to go look at on that, again, want this channel to be sort of a library of information, so you can go just down into the description or on the little timeline down here and you can kind of scroll through and see which lenses you want to look at specifically. So the first lens we'll do is the Voigtlander 28 1.8. Again, we're going to start on the X-E4, so looks great right here. This is it native on the Leica M10. And then this is the super wide on the GFX 50R. And you can see that there's definitely a lot of vignetting and possibly some blockage in the corner there. But honestly, it looks like something you could probably recover. Maybe there's a little bit in the corner that you wouldn't be able to, but overall, pretty impressed with how well that lens did. The second lens is the TTArtisan's 28mm 1.4. So here it is on the crop sensor X-E4. Here it is natively on the Leica M10. And here it is on the GFX 50R. And again, you can see a little bit of the coloration changing and some definite vignetting on the edges, but there's no hard corners, no hard edges, and you could definitely get away with that. So thumbs up to that lens on the GFX. The third lens is going to be the Leica 28mm Summicron version 2. So here it is on the X-E4. Here it is on the Leica M10. And here it is on the GFX 50R. Honestly, I'm not really sure what it is, but it almost feels like this is a little bit darker and more vignetted than the 28 TTArtisans. although the sharpness and everything else is definitely better, but that's just a pretty interesting thing to note. But again, I'll say that that lens would definitely perform well on the GFX or any other medium format 44x33 system. Okay, and now we are on to the most bizarre lens of the pair, and I almost didn't put this on there, but I thought, you know what, might as well. This is the Pancake TTArtisan's 35 f5.6. It actually performs amazing. Like, it totally covers the medium format sensor, and yeah, the edges are just kind of like hot garbage, but the center's actually pretty sharp, and if you kind of just wanted it as like a lens cap kind of thing to toss on a medium format body and be able to still shoot some stuff, not too bad. And then the lens after that is the 35mm f1.4 from TTArtisans. So this is it on the X-E4, on the Leica M10, and then on the GFX 50R. Again, there's definitely vignetting and some kind of color coming in there. But I really like the rendering, and I feel like this would be another lens that you could definitely use on the GFX if you didn't mind using some lens corrections and vignetting control to fix those things. The next lens is the Zeiss 35mm f1.4 Distagon. Here it is on the X-E4. Here it is on the Leica M10. And then on the GFX, there's not hard corners for sure, but you know, you're gonna have to do some work to the Zeiss, but it is definitely usable on the GFX. And here is the Leica 50mm Summilux aspheric on the X-E4. This is one of the best lenses I've ever owned, on the Leica M10. And then on the GFX 50R, you can actually see a little bit towards the very edges of distortion on this, which I haven't really been checking for the other ones, but is definitely present in the next lens we'll look at, the TTArtisan. And so you can kind of see up here in the top corner where it starts to kind of bend out a little bit. So definitely something to look at, but overall the rendering and the sharpness is amazing and gives that really cool medium format-y look. And the 50 Summilux is just a fantastic lens overall. And then moving from the 50 Summilux on to the TTArtisan 50mm f1.4. This is the lens I actually used on the GFX more even than the 110 f2. And if you want to see my GFX video, you can definitely check that as well. So here is the TTArtisan 50.1.4 on the X-E4. If you're gonna have both systems, it's actually a pretty good lens and incredibly affordable. So it looks pretty good on the X-E4. Here it is on the Leica M10. It's definitely just like a little bit softer, a little bit more chromatic aberration and stuff like that than the 50 Summilux. But again, this is one of the best lenses for the money I've ever used. So definitely look into this if you are in any of these systems. And then on the GFX, the rendering and everything is just beautiful. I loved using it. But again, you can see in those corners where it kind of starts to bow out a little bit. The thing I had the most issues with on the GFX and the TTArtisan was just that distortion. I could pretty easily fix the vignetting, but the distortion was the thing that was the most kind of wacky out of those things. And last and maybe least, we have the TTArtisan 75mm f1.25, which is really soft, and you can see a lot of chromatic aberration and issues in this particular photo, even on the X-E4, but it's still usable-ish depending on what you're doing. And again, this is at f1.25. And then here it is on the Leica M10. It's just like a bokeh machine, definitely soft, but it kind of has like that vintagey feel. And here it is on the GFX. I was definitely bummed because I do wish that it had covered. This is the only lens of the bunch that definitely had hard corners that you couldn't actually get around. But I do find that you could crop it to a square or even kind of like a 6:7 crop, and you'd be able to get usable stuff out of it. Again, it's really, really soft, but it gives you a really kind of dreamy old school look. So if sharpness is your thing, you're definitely not gonna wanna buy that lens. And if you want corner to corner, just coverage on a medium format 44x33 sensor, you also won't get that on that lens. But the depth of field on it is pretty ridiculous and still would be kind of a cool look for a 6x7 or 6x6 style crop. So overall, I'm actually really surprised at how many of these Leica M-mount lenses were able to cover the entire sensor. All but one actually were able to be fixed into getting a look that was decent. I think the difference between the 3 sensor sizes is super interesting and unique. And the cool thing is you can buy these lenses and use them on all 3 for the most part, and it just kind of depends on your tolerance for sharpness and distortion and all that kind of stuff and how much editing you want to do. In kind of conclusion with all of it, I will say that all of the lenses work great on the crop sensors, obviously, because the closer to the center you are on a lens, usually kind of the better it is. So all the lenses perform great on the Fuji. They all perform fine on the Leica M10 because that's the format that they're all made for the most part. And then I'm actually pretty surprised again at how many of them worked on the 44x33 sensor that the Hasselblad X1D, the Fujifilm GFX series, and even the Pentax 645Z or Z, depending on what part of the continent you're from. They all share that sensor, but if you are looking into the Pentax, you definitely can't do all these adapting. But it definitely works on the GFX series as well as the Hasselblad X1D and the 907X series. So again, if you have a question about a specific lens, I'll leave links to those lenses below. And then if you have any just questions in general, feel free to ask them in the comments and I will try to get to as many as I can. So thanks again, and I will see you on the next one.